Hello, friends. Welcome to the Christ and Coffee podcast. Today we have Father Astor, my good friend when he was in New Jersey. Now he is the rector of St. David's in Burbank, an Anglican church there. And today we're going to talk about something extremely serious. I know Astor is a scholar of the Bible. He's went to Princeton Theological Seminary in Fuller. So I brought him to talk about this important topic of what makes a movie a Christmas movie, with Die Hard as a case study to kind of anchor this conversation. So Astor, I know I brought you in for a very difficult task, but are you ready for the challenge?
I think I am. I've had 2 cups of coffee. Didn't sleep last night, and so I'm prepared. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, great, man. It's good to see you, brother. I'm so happy that you are where you are as a rector. I love the fact that you pursue this calling into the Anglican priesthood, and you recently achieved the goal. So congrats on that.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think you were one of the first people I shared this dream with one day, or prayer, and it's crazy. Here we are many years later, and I'm happy for you as well. And so we've had a really good friendship over the years, and to think I'd be doing a podcast on for Christmas movies as an Anglican priest in LA again, I could not make this up for
So
sure.
the movie that we're going to focus on today is Die Hard, and it does take place in your neck of the woods. In fact, you like drive by the building. Is it in Burbank, LA area? Where is it?
No, it's on the west side. It's right before you get into Beverly Hills, Central Century City. But it's a nice part of town on the west side. But it's there. The building's there.
So
Yeah, for sure.
what? So how? If someone asks you the question, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? How would you respond?
I would say, is the Pope Catholic? Of course it is. I
So
would
so
say,
of
yeah,
course, of
of
course.
course it is.
So for those who don't know, can you just summarize what the Die Hard plot is? It's this very classic movie that we grew up on.
Yeah, it's probably late 80s, early 90s, probably late 80s. Definitely, I grew up watching this. Basically, you have this cop that's flying in from the East Coast, John McClane, and he's going to see his wife. He's got this, you know, difficult marriage relationship, strained, and probably in the works, a divorce is in the works probably as it's standing. He flies in, and there's a Christmas party. To see her during a Christmas party, she's invited him, and once he gets there, to his surprise and everybody else's, the company is taken hostage by these Russians.
Germans.
Germans, that's right, Germans. And they basically demand a lot of these exaggerated things. And there's money in a vault that they're just trying to kill time. And they finally get access. And the whole thing is to fly away, to get away, actually, and get away with the money. But they have to hold the people, the company, hostage in order to do that. So it creates this havoc, and all of LA is shut down, the grid, the lights and everything. So it's happening on Christmas Eve, I believe. And so John, here's this undercover cop, finds himself on his day off, basically having to save the people and bring these bad guys down. And that's kind of the plot. And he eventually is, I don't want to be a spoiler, but it is a 30 years old movie. I think the story ends with him doing just that,
Saving
saving the people, saving the
the
people.
saving the people, absolutely. So I think let's break down criteria. So the setting is Christmas. There's a
Mm-hmm.
Christmas party.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are key elements to a Christmas movie. And then you
Right.
also have Christmas music. And in fact, like the beginning of this movie starts with a limo driver picking him up. His name is Argyle, and
Mm-hmm.
John McClane. It's not sitting in the back of the limo. He's sitting in the front because he's an everyman. He's one of us. He's not like this elitist guy who drives a limo. And John McClane, who's played by Bruce Willis, is asking this young driver, can you play any Christmas music? And he goes, this is Christmas music, and he plays a hip hop song. And I feel like
Right.
that's a foreshadowing of like, this is not your conventional Christmas movie, but it's kind of going to have some Christmas elements. I don't want to say Christian elements quite frequently, but like Christmas elements. Um,
Oh yeah.
and 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 this journey begins of a holiday party. You have music. What else? What are some like key things that like create this genre called Christmas music
Well,
movies?
here's another thing that I think that's subtle that I just think about now. With your introduction, there is, the movie starts with John McClane being on a plane,
Yeah.
and they're about to land. He's coming from the East Coast, and this idea of a descending person coming from the sky down onto the ground,
Oh, whoa. This is
right?
getting theologically deep here.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I just thought about that, and here he is to basically save. He doesn't know it at the time, but he's going to come in here and basically he's going to get bloody. There's going to be all kinds of casualties, and he's going to save and redeem people. So there's John coming down as a cop, as a savior, a protector, a provider, sort of thing, right? And so that's there. I see a little bit, but as far as your list, you said the music. It's definitely there's family, right? There's
Yeah, that's a key element of all this. Yeah.
huge, huge, and then all the props, the Christmas lights and the trees and the kind of the festive spirit of it all. They're at a party,
Yeah.
they're socializing, that sort of thing.
I think every Christmas movie has to have some element of family and reconciliation. There's always some sense of like drama in the family and then reconciliation. So there on Netflix, there's How Movies Are Made. It's a sub series, and Die Hard was one of them. And the main writer who kind of wrote the script based on a novel. I forget the name of the novel, but it was turned into a movie script, and he kind of found the anchor point of the movie script from the novel, because he got into a fight with his wife, and then he got on the highway, like leaving a fight with his wife where he was at fault, and he almost got in a car accident. There was like a refrigerator in the middle of the highway. He ran into it, but luckily it wasn't like filled with stuff, so he was able to survive. And then when he got home, he realized that's going to be like one of the main themes of this movie is having this estranged marriage, and what's it like to have this feeling of I should apologize, but I never had the chance to. And if like one of the climax of the movie is as Bruce Willis's character is trying to liberate the hostages, again a very Christian motif. He does tell his partner, who's Carl, whose his name is Al Powell, who's Carl Winslow from Family Matters, classic. Any millennial will know what I'm talking about. There, he plays the same role, but in a comedy with Steve Urkel. But he's in this
Right.
serious movie with Bruce Willis. Please tell her I'm sorry. I just don't know how to say I'm sorry. I told her I love you, but I wasn't able to say apologize, and that's kind of the main theme. And then you have that family theme again when the stupid reporter is putting the information out to the terrorists about who the family is, and the kid who's waiting for their dad to come home for Christmas. The line is "Come home" in the
Mhm.
news. Like I think that summarizes like a
That's good.
reconciliation, a feeling of family. That's across the board in like every sort of Christmas movie. This sense of family and tension in the family, and then they're all coming together.
Yeah, I think that's the core, the moral of the story, right? That's the core objective of the story. Everything else revolves around that, all the action and the drama with the plot. But the underlining, I think, meaning is that it's that reconciliation between John and his wife, and there's a child there, at home. Come home, come home. That's beautiful. Everything else is just the action that surrounds that story, that plot, and that's no different than in life. I think, right? That's kind of how it is.
Yeah,
You know. So,
absolutely. So what makes this movie special for you? Like,
well, now that I'm, in my late 30s, it's interesting. As a child, I could maybe identify when I first watched this. My parents allowed me to watch it, even though there's a lot of foul language and probably all that good stuff and action. But I was able to watch it. It was one of my first movies watched. I probably watched on VHS. I know the first one was A Land Before Time. This was dinosaurs
that is
cartoon.
one of the saddest. I think that's sad. That's sadder than Die Hard, because you have the mom dying in the beginning. There's that sad scene
Yeah.
That is the saddest thing to show a kid. Like that should be
Well,
rated R if we talk about emotions. Anyway,
well, I went from basically The Land Before Time to Die Hard,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was from the death of a mom. Now from rated G to, I think it was probably R back then.
It's totally rated R. It's not a
Totally
good
rated.
Christian movie. I'm gonna say
No,
that
no.
publicly
So
before we get in trouble
yeah,
by
so I
certain
guess
viewers.
my parents were at work or something. Somehow we were able to watch it all the time with the VHS. But as a kid watching that, John McClane was his hero. He was like an action figure, an action hero, kind of like kind of in the spirit of like Rocky or Rambo, that kind of guy. Not like Superman or with a cape, but he was like a real human being that's safe,
Exactly. And
right?
this is what like changed the action movie genre this movie did, because it wasn't like some jacked up Stallone or
Right.
Schwarzenegger who was like steroid up muscle builder. It would the character feels like, oh, that could have been me. It's like an everyman sort of action
Yeah.
hero. So like more people related to him as an actor, even though like when the movie came out, like the trailers, people were laughing because they didn't think that Bruce Willis was action hero material, because it
Well,
was
it's understandable because during that era, that's all you had.
yeah.
You had the Rocky and the Rambos and the Terminators and all those movies, Total Recall, all of these action steroids and Conan the Barbarian sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden you have this action. Is he an action guy? Is it this guy a hero? He looks like an average Joe, but I think that's the genius of the movie because it's relatable. Like
Yeah.
it makes it more believable, even with all the action, the stunts, the stuff that none of us could probably do, even in our 20s. But here's a guy in his like 40s, mid 40s or whatever, and he's pulling them off. But you can relate. And as a kid watching that, he was somebody that inspired me. I guess at the moment, he was somebody that I looked up to. And I started watching Bruce Willis movies because of that movie.
Yeah.
I started following Bruce Willis as a kid because I was cheering for him. He was one of my favorite actors because of that movie. He had such a kind of an impact on me. Unconsciously, he was having that too. But as an adult, when I watch it now, I see it through the lens of a father.
Yeah, yeah. I totally had a
As
different
a
lens of
married
it.
man,
Yep.
just because the circumstances have changed. It's the same movie, but the lens that I'm watching this movie through is that now as a husband and as a father. So there's moments that I probably as a kid watched and overlooked, and now are much more intense for me. You know what I mean? So it depends where you are in life watching that movie. If you're a cop, I imagine the same. You identify maybe deeper
Yeah.
or much more closer with John and some of the other characters.
Now, when you watched this as a kid, where were you watching it from? Because I think that you have a fascinating upbringing.
Well, I was watching it in Glendale in
Okay,
my living
okay.
room.
But you were born in Nigeria, right?
I was
Okay,
born in Lagos, Nigeria. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. My
But
my parents they grew up in Lebanon, but there was the civil war. So obviously, the first place you go to when you leave a civil war in Beirut is Nigeria,
of
and
course.
of course, no. But so my sister and I were born there. My brother was born in Lebanon, so I have two siblings. But there was going to be a civil war in Nigeria as well. There was corruption. There was an uprising, and so we had to leave, and so we came to the States.
Yes, yes. It's quite this. And then like you watch Die Hard, and Die Hard teaches you about American culture and what it means to be.
Survival skills, definitely. No, it wasn't a fairy tale movie. It wasn't like Cinderella or Snow White. It was a real action hero, but it was happening in a city where I lived.
Yeah.
I can identify as a kid airplanes and buildings and cars and cops and lights and that sort of thing, mom, dad, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of things, even as a kid, it pulls you in. I mean, and anyways, I didn't understand the language. It was probably the first time I was exposed to those words,
Yeah,
and I don't
yeah.
even know what those words meant. I was like, okay, whatever. It's like any other word that I wasn't familiar with,
All right.
but it was cool, definitely cool.
Just to recap before we move on to some other movies. So you have Die Hard, you have Christmas music, uh you have family reconciliation, you have some sort of incarnation. He flies from overseas, from New York. He's a New York City cop, enters
Mhm.
into the danger, liberates hostages. That's pretty Christmassy right there. And then you have like the feel good, the good guys win sort of experience. I feel like that's like the final piece to a good Christmas movie. Like there's no Christmas movie that ends on a bad note. Like to be a Christmas
Oh,
movie, it has to be like everything is okay. Roll the
yeah.
credits, more Christmas music.
Even though there's like a bunch of debris at the end of the movie and confetti and money just still like flying in the air, falling from the 45th story, and there's lights and there's smoke and there's fire. They're walking husband and wife together, him limping, bleeding, and they're walking together and they're going to go see their son. And it's basically a perfect ending, a marriage reconciled, that was estranged, as you said, and it is a good feeling movie at the end. You did mention the ransom, the reconciliation. Clearly, there's that theme there, right? It's there. Here's this guy who's trying to save people that are held hostage, and that's the Christian story, right? Being saved, being redeemed, ransomed from the evil one, if you will. That's at least one of the ideas. And so definitely John. And there's John McClane, another kind of a biblical name, John, right? Of all the names he could have been, it could have been Benny, it could have been Rick, but it was John. And so there's a lot of themes there, I think, that the directors, writers, all those were tapping into that our culture would understand. So I loved it. I still love it. It's one of those movies I can watch again and again. I don't get tired.
I feel like that's
Uh,
another criteria for a Christmas movie. There's a repeatable factor to it. It's not a
yeah,
Christmas movie if you can just watch it once. It doesn't become like it's not a Christmas song if you just listen to it once. I think whatever that thing is in our subculture as Christmas, it has to be repeatable.
yeah, and there's so much. There's just so many. What's the word I'm looking for? These cultural, like, popular scenes in that movie that you never forget. His feet are bloody. He had to run through glass that was shattered, through gun shooting, and he's got to jump off of a building where he's got the a fire hose tied to
Yeah.
his waist when the bomb is blowing. There's just these. There's the elevator opening and it blows up, and then there's I forget his name right now, but there's the guy with the pen. What's his name? Pete. What was his name? Anyway, the hot shot kind of salesman. He thinks he can deliver John to Hans, and he's flipping the pencil, and he says, "I can give him to you."
Yeah, yeah.
He's
He's
got
like he's like the Judas figure of the movie. He's supposed to be on the team of the good guys, but he's like yeah, he betrays the John and yeah, he's a not a good person.
so there's
Uh
all those famous those moments that you remember, those scenes that are so embedded, and I guess you watch it again and again, and you look forward to those scenes. They're hilarious, and at the same time they're meaningful. So I think a lot of it, yeah.
I think another thing about Christmas movies is they say the word Merry Christmas throughout the movie. Even though there's swear words in this that we're not endorsing here, but that there's always
Right.
that sort of thing. So there's this aspect of feel good, like you can watch it more than once. There's a Christmas setting of music and the scenes, and in Die Hard, there's this ransom theology of a savior figure who's like undercover. You don't, it's not he's in the scene, but he's different, redeems us, redeems the good people from the bad people. Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
so what would you say is your favorite Christmas movie? I know we're using Die Hard as a case study, but there's so many Christmas movies out there.
There's a lot. Obviously, like there's a top five probably. Most people have a list. Top, Home Alone's probably on most people's list as well. As Imagine. I liked Home Alone as a kid. I want to say I'm a humor guy. I love funny movies, um, and I think Die Hard has humor in it. Um, but I would have to say National Lampoon's um, Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase. Again, it's the family, right? There's snow, there's lights. It's frustrating. Nothing goes right for this guy. Everything he does, it turns out to be a terrible, like leading up to Christmas Day. The tree catches on fire. He's got these family members that distant family members that he despises that show up unannounced. and they make his life hell. He's got issues with his wife. His kids are not talking to him, and he doesn't get the bonus he wanted for Christmas that he was depending on to buy the new pool to build a new pool. And so one disappointment after another, one disappointment after another. But it's a beautiful setting. It's a nice, picture perfect, like white picket fence home. Something colonial. It's just perfect somewhere in the East Coast. Snow's coming down, but tragedy, tragedy, tragedy spells the whole movie. But then at the end, they come together and they look at what matters most. It's not the tree, it's not the eggnog, it's not the food, it's not the money that he was going to get or not get it for a Christmas reward. It was actually the love that they have as a family, bonding, coming together, and that's, you do definitely have that, and that's why as a kid growing up, it was very sentimental. One of my favorite because it's full of laughter. Yeah, you can't stop laughing out loud in that movie.
Yeah, well, every Christmas movie has to have laughter in it. It's like that's what makes it too. There's all
Yeah.
these tensions, and there's this like, I mean, I think The Simpsons kind of ripped that off. I feel like you're describing like multiple Simpsons episodes.
Oh,
But
really?
but but Simpsons has like Christmas specials where it's kind of very similar, Like at the end of the day, the family's still together, even though the husband is a blundering idiot. He
Mhm.
still is like fighting for his family, and like it's like it still like wraps up in a nice bow, because like that those values are upheld, of family, of we're gonna stick through it no matter what, even though I'm gonna make a bunch of mistakes. But yeah, what about Home Alone? Because that's a very like that's another one that you won't maybe think it's a Christmas movie right away, but then it has elements of, all right, I'm abandoned and I need to be reconciled to my family, literally.
Yeah, I remember one of my initial reactions to Home Alone is, man, what a beautiful home.
Right.
Like I think the home itself spoke volumes. Like going up and down the stairs, it was decorated, like decked out, very Christmas festive, with all the wreaths and then that sort of candles. It was just like wow, and you got all these families coming together. This was a regular thing that they did during the holidays, during Christmas. So there was tradition. Again, the setting was East Coast, and it's funny. A lot of these movies are, although Die Hard, but might be the exception. A lot of them are East Coast, if you notice, because of the snow, the cold
Yeah.
weather, the scarves, the mittens, and the beanies and stuff. And then sometimes there's a church involved, and those are very Gothic and very historical sort of looking churches. But the homes themselves, right? And so I remember that was the first thing that jumped out at me was, wow, what a beautiful home. I would love to be this kid, right? To be like lost in this house. I was forgotten. I got this whole beautiful place to myself. Kind of envied that as a kid. And he's he's got the whole world to himself. Like his parents are flying around Paris and they have to come back somehow. But there he's got this whole home to himself. And so for me, and what's key in that, I think, in what you said too, is another thing that has to do with family is the object of love,
Yeah.
right? Like all these Christmas stories at the core, whether it's Die Hard, Come Home Dad, that sort of thing with his wife, that relationship with his wife. But even this, like, there's love. Like a mom is doing everything in her power, whatever it takes, to come back to save her son from possible, damage or hurt, whatever. But there's love there, and then he misses his mom. He realizes early, like, this is not fun being by myself, and so I think love has to be a central message. There's a love story, whether that's relational, like an intimate love between a guy and a man and a woman or something, but could be between siblings or a kid and their parents. So again, so many sentimental things, and the music draws you to. I think they have Silent Night, or Holy Night. They
Yeah.
have all those captivated me. I tapped into like the reservoir, like areas of my, like, for the first time that I didn't know I had in my being. I don't
Yeah.
know if that was that your experience with Home Alone?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the first, as like a kid who was Macaulay Culkin's age, like a little younger, but like that's the first time you have such a child star carrying a movie for like our age demographic. So like there's that immediate like, oh my gosh, he's like me,
Yeah, no doubt.
relatability. Yeah, yeah. And Yeah, I mean, I think Home Alone was always it was more of a fun movie. I think in retrospect, I appreciated the Christmas elements when I saw it like recently. I didn't pick up on it right away, I guess, when I was enjoying it in the first couple of times, but there's like it's there. Like I didn't even think it's a Christmas movie, until like recently, where I was like, oh wait, this whole setting is around that setting. Um,
On Christmas Eve, where he goes to a mass. It's a
yeah,
Catholic church. There's a major outside, the Nativity,
yeah,
and he walks in, and there's this old man who he's always scared of, right, in the church pews he sits next to, and he's actually a loving, warm man.
yeah,
And talk about reconciliation. Here's this man who has an estranged relationship with his son and need to be reconciled, and what he sees with Kevin and his mom,
yeah,
right? The love, the bond they have, it prompts him to reach out to his son eventually. They hadn't spoken for years. And I think through the window at the end, Kevin looks through the window and he sees his neighbor, this old man with the beard, with the shovel, has his son come back to the
yeah.
house. And it's just a feel good ending, like again, reconciliation. It's subtle, but that's the ultimate, I think, take home, right? With all the dressing above it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think one of my favorite movies of all time is also like takes place on Christmas is Rocky Four. like Rocky Four, it takes
Of
place on
course,
Christmas.
of
He
course.
Rocky topples down the Soviet Union where they're chanting for an American in Mother Russia on Christmas Day, and in 1991 the day after Christmas is when the Soviet Union falls 30 years ago. It's all because of Rocky Four. I mean, it doesn't get any more Christmassy than the toppling of a Soviet communistic regime.
Oh man, you're so right. I mean, geez, I never saw Rocky as a political figure like that, but man, he had some power, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, if he could change, everyone could change, man. Everyone
Well,
could
he says
change.
at the end, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's
If,
his famous
if I can
speech.
change, you can change. Well, you know what? That's interesting. That's an element I never really noticed. That's really
And there's his son is watching the fight from America, saying "I love you, Dad," and
they got the American flags
yeah,
and
they got the
everything.
whole thing going on. Yeah, yeah. But it they definitely have the snow theme, and they have an awesome '80s soundtrack of fighting music. But
Oh yeah. Well, I think my favorite scene in that movie is when he gets into his like Lambo, and it's probably not a Lamborghini, it's probably a Pantera or something, and he throws it in reverse, and the exhaust and the music comes on.
yeah,
Um,
there's no easy way out, and there's these
yeah,
montages
that's
from all the Rockies as Apollo Creed dies.
who does not, whether you're 5 years old or like 85 years old, you watch that scene, you want to go out and run like
Yeah, yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
miles.
yeah, yeah. The whole movie is pretty much a music video with the toppling of the Soviet Union. Like it's just training montage. It's like montage after montage, and
Right.
James Brown is in it. That's pretty phenomenal too. Living in America.
Living in America. I mean, it's just so good, man.
it's so good. It's a good
When you
Christmas
got
movie.
James Brown, when you have James Brown
Yeah, yeah,
wearing like a pink or red, whatever he's wearing, you can't get better than that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's pretty
Father
phenomenal.
Soul, right?
And I think another thing about all these movies we're mentioning, the villains are phenomenal. Hans Gruber, Ivan Drago, the two thieves in the Home Alone, like phenomenal villains. They're very
Right.
memorable opposition to really bring out
And they need to be. There needs to be a contrast, like
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
radical contrast, and so you can point it out clearly. There's no doubt that these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. Right? Totally. And that guy was chiseled, wasn't he? Like, look, Rocky Balboa had a nice body as a kid growing up. You look at that Stallone, right? But when
yeah,
you looked at Ivan Drago, I mean, this towering figure, like 6'6",
yeah, yeah, yeah.
chiseled, like looked like a robot, not
Yeah.
even human. Perfect haircut.
Yeah, and he was taking drugs even on the in the movie too to get that physique.
Oh,
Uh,
little secret here I'll reveal to you. That's kind of it. I think Hans, not Hans, but Ivan Drago was the inspiration for my fade haircuts for the past 30 years.
Not
I
just
think
yours, but a whole generation. He might have been one of the earlier adopters of that fade. Yeah, that's a good
he had
point.
the
You're
perfect
right. You're
fade
right. I
haircut.
never that he made fades cool before they were a thing. Yeah,
Right, right.
because the
So
'80s was all about like long hair and the hairspray and stuff. He was just like he was beyond his times, man.
him and Val Kilmer in Top Gun probably did it for me as far as fades. They did it. They did
Yeah,
Iceman, Iceman.
yeah. Another classic, but not a Christmas movie at all.
No, not at all.
But Goose dying in Land Before Time, Apollo Creed dying. No, I mean the mom dying in Land Before Time, Apollo
Right.
Creed dying, Goose dying in Top Gun, Bambi's mom dying. These are probably the top four like moments in movie cinema where have I actually cried. Like I can't think of any other moments.
Oh,
like
really?
I mean, I'm sure they are, but those are really sad, dramatic moments. I mean,
They are
maybe
because of
maybe the grandfather, and I'll put that as number 5, more of a modern one. But those are always like moments in movies where I was like, I have to fast forward through this. I'm a kid. I can't process this right now.
yeah, no, I could see that totally. Yeah, because they're so you wish it would be otherwise. They're so innocent. They weren't meant to die, and
Yeah.
you have a heart for them. They're sentimental figures for I probably shed a tear. I don't remember it, but I probably shed a tear as a kid watching, some of those scenes for sure, no doubt.
Yeah. Especially
Uh,
Apollo Creed. Apollo Creed is the one that gets me.
yeah, that one gets me. Yeah. That's not a Christmas movie though, but I think should make it in anybody's top five, regardless. It's just somehow get involved, even if Usual Suspects. Um, for me, that's all time. Since we're just talking about movies, I can't
Sure,
believe.
sure, sure. This is a very structured theological conversation here.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Usual
probably
suspects, yeah.
they're going to do case studies on this particular podcast for
Oh, definitely, definitely. They're gonna be.
millennia. Usual Suspects that which starred Kevin Spacey, him playing this
Kaiser
version.
Kaiser Sose, his name was it?
Yeah, but throughout the movie, he's Virgil,
Yeah,
right?
that's
He's
right.
this,
That's right.
insignificant, uh, foolish, almost very overlooked, dumb figure character in the story, but he's actually someone the smartest guy in the room,
Yeah.
essentially. He is Kaiser Sose. And talk about a plot, talk about an ending, talk about like stopping you in your tracks and completely being blown away. I don't want to be a spoiler if you haven't watched.
It's been like almost 30 years now, so.
It won a bunch of, I'm sure it won a bunch of awards, Academy Awards. It must have for different reasons. But that is my all time favorite movie. I think it's the most well written movie and ending. That and a close second is the movie Seven with Brad Pitt.
Yeah. These are good theological independent movies. I end up quoting that movie a lot, like especially whenever you talk about spiritual warfare. Like the greatest trick the devil ever played was to pretend like he doesn't exist, to convince the world that he doesn't exist. I mean, that's
Yeah,
pretty much the
yeah.
theme of that of Usual Suspects. And then 7 is the 7 deadly sins, and there's always stuff to talk about with those things.
What's in the box? What's in the
That's
box?
right. That's right.
That's my best Brad Pitt impression. What's in the box?
Yeah. So what are some other? I mean, there's like a whole like Christmas genre of catalogs because of like, was it like 4 years ago, 5 years ago? Netflix was like, let's do like a Hallmark type movie called The Christmas Prince, and it like just broke so many like records at the time of viewership. But now if you go on like your Netflix account, there's like at least 10, 12 Christmas movies that are like all like cheesy in their own respective ways. But I don't think any of them are going to be Christmas movies until they are able to be like the test of time, like Home
Yeah,
Alone, Die Hard, Rocky 4. People, if they're on TV, I'm watching those movies.
right.
Um, like Miracle on 34th Street, It's a Wonderful Life. These are classics.
Beautiful stories. Yeah.
But
Christmas Carol
Christmas Carol.
with Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a repeatability factor, feel good factor. The setting is there, but there's, like you said earlier, like it revolves around love. And I think if we don't see Christmas as the time of God revealing his love to us, like we missed the mark of the whole point of Christmas, right? Like At the end of the day, it's the incarnation of love.
Yeah, for me, as uh, like I love the humor and the Christmas movies because they have all the stuff that we just listed, the criteria. But like if I put on my theological hat on and I had to be a really a critic, right? Really, really critical about what's being communicated. A lot of times there's message of like self-awareness or uh, being a good person or a hyper sense of spirituality or something like that. But it's basically like do better or change, right? Change. Like somebody's in a particular, a specific mood or way of like being, and then this moment, this something happens, a circumstance takes place, and then they change. So there's kind of this change of whether it's more kind, more generous, more forgiving, which has obviously Christian roots, and there is implications there of, of the Christian story, the Christ event, right? But a lot of times, if I'm being, as from what I'm persuaded by Pastor Haig, is is there's a lot of human effort involved, right?
Yeah.
It is like, which there is human part in this in the Christian faith or walk, but we understand the gospel with grace, a message of grace, right? A promise of grace, of what Christ has done for us, right? And so that we receive that reckoning or that declaration of forgiveness. We receive the love of God, not because of what we've done, but what He has done on our behalf, overcoming sin, death, and we're then moved, so moved by the Spirit, our hearts are warmed, or are circumcised, or transformed, right? But by what He has done. I think sometimes, though, if I'm being honest, and I don't want to be a spoiler, I don't want to be the bad, the
You don't
party
want to
pooper.
be the Grinch who stole Christmas, but
That's it. That's a great line. That's perfect. Is if I want to be like theologically, I think fair and honest, is the gospel is what God has done, right?
right.
The good news of God, right? The justification of God and the righteousness of God. And then we are the recipients of that, right? We receive that grace, right? And so although they have a lot of the okay, what happens after faith stuff, right? Like the fruits, how one becomes more like Christ. True, these movies have a lot of the post-resurrection, the if you will, like in Romans 12 and beyond, the imperative, what it means to be a follower now, right? The fruits of that life, and that's we're all for that, and that's what I want. That's what we seek, right? Love God and neighbor, that sort of thing. What does that look like tangibly, right? But if the central message of the Christian story of Christmas. The Christmas story is the incarnation of God becoming one like us, pitching his tent, becoming one like us, and then the story of redemption, right? That's the Advent and of redemption coming into the world, reconciling a broken world. So that is like, if I'm being honest and fair to the biblical text and tradition and reason, it is that of what God has done, who God is, the person and nature of God. Everything else is, yeah, there's connections to the Christian story. Like all these movies have connections, but I don't think it's being an accurate portrayal of what Christmas is, right?
Right.
Christmas, the Thanksgiving of Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of my frustration with the 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 facade of Christmas season. It loses sight of this miraculous, redeeming story. And any good work of art will kind of reflect it because we're made in the image of this wonderful narrative of God sending his son to redeem us. I mean, the whole gospel is God becomes part of the human family, so humanity could be part of God's family. And the pivotal person in all this is Christ, who was born on Christmas, and because he came, we get to call his dad our dad. We get adopted into his family, and that's the beauty of Christmas. Like we belong to the reconciliation of God's family. It takes place because of Jesus, and and throughout every season there's Christmas songs singing praise to the coming of the Savior, who's who redeems us and rescues us from the grasp of Satan, sin, and death. And it's there's something feel good about that because it's the truth. It's like it's a free gift, like you're saying. It's not something we have to earn. We can't earn it. We just have to be freed by it and receive it and accept it and be grateful for the one who does it for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we can't expect that from movies because you can't replace, you can't, you know, and kind of have a sequel to the Christmas story, if you will, right? Like
Yeah.
an accurate portrayal. Because to be honest, a lot of the Christmas movies that, like you just listed, like a whole set of them towards the end here, they're kind of cheesy. They really don't do it for me. Maybe at a younger age, for family, but as I'm someone in the late 30s, mid 30s, late 30s, whatever. They don't do it. They're too cheesy. The reason why I like a movie like Die Hard and some of these other ones is because they tend to be a more kind of incarnational, more real, more concrete. They're not fairy tale, which is the great irony in
Yeah.
a lot of these Christian movies, Christmas Christian movies, whatever. They tend to be not real, which is the great irony. Is like if anyone should be claiming the real, it is us, but they're so unrealistic and it's almost like a fairy tale minus popular words like Cinderella and Snow White. They just have a different setting and different characters, but they're not believable. And
Right.
if you want, and so, but a movie like Die Hard, which is full of like guns and bombs and blood and betrayal, and ironically, a movie that is quote unquote more on the secular end, if you will, not on the sacred, if you have to put them in categories,
Yeah. Yeah.
it has much more sacred reality, if you will, or the reality like identifiable. It's more grounded in stuff that you and I can identify. Whether you're on, what are you on, 34th Street? What are you
Yeah.
on, 33rd
Miracle on
Street?
34th Street. It's right by the
Right?
Macy's.
Or I'm on Glen Oaks in Burbank. It's more relatable, but it's secular. But what are we doing then? So I don't want to be again a critic, but I'm saying that's why I don't really watch those movies because I don't relate with them. I
You're talking
relate
you're
with
you're,
them.
you're talking about the Hallmark cookie cutter cheesy Christmas song movies, or even just
Sure,
cheesy Christian movies.
sure, and I
That
get
that
this.
that that like
Yeah, I
that.
guess there might be a place. I'll just say this: there might be a place for that, but it can't be all that.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, it's like God becoming man is pretty as real as it gets, right? And if you read the narratives of scripture, it's never like sugar coated bow tie characters. It's fallen characters, messed up characters. The settings are violent. The circumstances is real. Like it does a disservice to the what is being testified to as not just the human experience of reality, but also what the Bible points to, because it is bloody. It is fallen. It is distorted. But like despite the darkness of this world, there's the light of Christ revealing his goodness to us, but in a manner that's relatable, because at the end of the day, Christmas is God becoming man. He relates to us, period.
Mhm. Yeah, life is not PG.
Yeah.
Life is rated R. It really is. I'm not saying go and promote rated R content and all that stuff, images and things like that. But the reality is that's the world we live in, and it's not PG. And kind of this purity sort of thing is not relatable for someone like me. As a kid, it is, and it's safe. I understand where parents are coming from and why people direct that and sponsor and endorse that. Totally understand that. I don't have any gripes with that. I'm just saying, as an adult, I identify, and it depends when you become an adult. Everybody's different depending on their life experiences. And so, something at 12, maybe to somebody who's had a tough life, can identify with
Yeah.
something that we see those hallmark, and they will identify more with a diehard because it's more real. So I think it's important to have that conversation and know that since we're talking about Christmas movies, I think it's important to mention that. I let my cards review my cards, in my hand.
Yeah.
Uh, I want to be grounded in reality and whatever I'm being catechized by or shaped by, whether it's movies or books or social media or whatever. I want it to shape and inform me in a way that's grounded in reality and in truth, not in a distant, far off land. Although there's place for that. Like I said, with C.S. Lewis is a great example of that. But again, even in fictional stories, there's still there is still like a reality of a cold brew tragic world.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the Christmas story. If we'd have to there's this theme of keeping things as real as possible, yet despite the realness, there's this great love and reconciliation in what God has done in Christ. Yeah, this is good stuff, Pastor Astor. Maybe next time we could talk about the usual suspects and maybe do different episodes on those movies. But yeah,
Sure.
I think we hit some important themes. We just kind of winged this whole conversation about like what
Winged
are
it.
what are some themes in Die Hard that are relatable? And like I think there's the repeatability, this love, reconciliation, this identifying with the stars, like all these things were really insightful things to kind of process of what makes something a Christmas movie. And if you have any suggestions, if you think Die Hard is a Christmas movie or not a Christmas movie, feel free to comment in whatever platform you're listening to this on. Comment below. Thank you for listening to the end of this podcast. I want to wish all the audience members a very Merry Christmas, and God bless you. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, brother, for joining me on this wonderful coffee hour. So God bless you all, and
Thank
take
you.
care.